Welcome to this masterclass on advocacy. I'm looking forward to sharing with you something of what I've learned over the last 35 years. I believe that Alzheimer's Disease International and its 100 members, or nearly 100 members, together have the power to improve the quality of lives of people with dementia and their families, both at the international and the national level. And I think we see that in the Global Dementia Action Plan. We see it in many of the national dementia plans. So together we have proved that we can get dementia onto the agendas of other organizations and national governments. So let me turn to what is advocacy. This definition brings out the main characteristics of advocacy, which is to speak, act, write on behalf of the interests of a disadvantaged person or a group, with the primary objective of protecting and defending their welfare and justice. And you achieve that by being on their side and nobody else's. You achieve it by being totally committed to being concerned with their fundamental needs. And above all, you remain loyal and accountable to them. You gain their trust, and you commit yourself in ways which is likely to be costly in emotional and maybe even in financial terms. Across the world, non-government organizations, like Alzheimer's organizations, have been groups that in political and cultural terms will vary. For example, they will be very different in different parts of Asia and the Middle East. You can define advocacy many different ways, but for the purposes of Alzheimer's organizations and this seminar, I really want to focus on two. Firstly, systems advocacy. This is directed at changing laws, making legislation, looking at policies, mental health, aged care, healthcare, changing the system so that it becomes more dementia friendly for people with dementia and their family carers. And then there's self-advocacy, and that is about Alzheimer's organizations empowering, supporting people with dementia and their family carers to advocate for themselves, to work in partnership with you, and to advocate for their individual needs and for their group needs. Advocacy will demand a lot of you. The word I like to capture that commitment is empathy. It really means walking in the shoes of another person, understanding the obstacles they face in everyday life, and working hard to understand and advance their interests. It means taking a lead, injecting a sense of urgency into discussions. It means being very committed and doing much more than might be the case in a routine occupation. It means being passionate, challenging the community to face up to the difficulties that you're talking about. It means being prepared to work hard, sometimes even for small gains. And writing letters is really not enough. You have to call politicians. You have to call editors of newspapers. You have to talk to media people. You have to stage events. You have to publish reports. In other words, you have to be active and positive. And never be afraid of repeating the same messages over and over. Advocacy is about reaching out, and you need to repeat the numbers, you need to repeat the messages until people understand what it is you're trying to communicate. Alzheimer's organizations, in my view, have one primary objective, and that is to establish a national voice. It will take a long time, in many cases, to make your organization effective. You will go through the process of setting up an organization, developing strategies for awareness, tackling stigma, setting up support groups, getting the basics right, like helplines, support groups, websites, leaflets. And then there will be the more sophisticated process of networking, making partnerships, and understanding that you can't do it all by yourself. Alzheimer's organizations are often short of resources, but they're not short of credibility and can get their message across with the support of others. And lastly, there's what I call the development of intellectual capital, which is where you publish documents, pamphlets, reports, hold workshops, work with clinicians and researchers, and in that way, make yourself credible by showing people that you know what you're talking about with facts and figures and good arguments. The essence of strategy is to do a strengths, weaknesses, and threats analysis, what we call a SWOT analysis. Not only does that help you focus on what it is you want to achieve, it helps you bring people together. By working on strategy together, you will help the unity of your organization and the other people who are advocating with you. And in that process, you need to set realistic demands. You need to understand the interests of government and their policies and the opportunities that their policies present for your advocacy. And you need to provide solutions to your demands. For example, you need to be able to talk about awareness strategies within and outside government. You need to talk about how to make the capacity of the health system greater in terms of providing for the needs of people with dementia. And you need to talk about support for carers, who after all do the heavy lifting in terms of dementia care in all countries across the world. So what are the key elements of advocacy? The 5 that I will talk about in this seminar are the 5 in this slide. Facts. Policymakers need facts, and often you will find these are not available, and you will have to work hard to establish a basis of fact. You will need a call for action, something that catches the imagination. In Australia, we had a very simple form of words to make our message clear. It was, make dementia a health priority. You need spokespeople who are experts, and these will often be your people with dementia, your family carers. You will need champions and allies within the government, and these will also include civil servants and politicians. And lastly, you will need to create partnerships, because as I've said, you cannot do it all alone. And if there's one simple message that I want you to take away from this seminar, it is to be focused in your advocacy. It may sound simple and trite, but ask yourself, if faced with the minister right now, what would be the 3 points you would make to him to get your message across? Ministers are busy. They're time limited. The media will always want you to say what you have to say in a very brief space of time. So practice. What are your 3 points? And make sure you can say them quickly and well. So let's turn to facts. You obviously have to start with what facts you know about dementia. You need to ask what more you need, how to present your case, and who will help you. And as important as facts are the stories of people with dementia and their informal carers. This is your greatest asset. It is the emotional message that persuades politicians and bureaucrats to listen to you. You have to consider what of the many materials produced by ADI will be helpful to you. You have to use them over and over. And I hope I'm helping you in this presentation by repeating things, because repetition is at the heart of advocacy. I learned an important lesson in 2001. An Australian academic, Professor Tony Jorm, wrote a 4-page publication for me entitled Dementia, a Major Health Problem. It was a simple publication which we distributed. And to my surprise, almost every media channel in Australia wanted to interview me. And they didn't challenge the message. They wanted to know what I wanted to tackle dementia. And I learned that the media was interested in the issue because their listeners were interested in the issue. And I learned that it is important to say precisely what it is you want. Remember that one success in advocacy is not a victory. Advocacy never stops. After that small success we had in 2001 in Australia, we went on to publish a much larger report called The Dementia Epidemic, Economic Impact and Positive Solutions for Australia. We published that in 2003, and in 2004, the then Australian government made dementia a health priority with $330 million in funding over 5 years. And there's been no let-up in advocacy for dementia in Australia since. Of course, what will work in Australia will not necessarily work in other countries. But I would like to emphasize what I believe is important, and that is that publications, intellectual capital, are one element that is crucial to your success. You will find on the Alzheimer's Disease International website many reports, and some of those I will refer to in a bit more detail. But look at the plans of other countries. Look at the regional reports on the Asia Pacific and Africa. Many of these reports will help you, but remember, you can't simply hand over a report to a minister or a bureaucrat. They're too busy. You have to have your 3 points and be ready to talk about the issues in a way that will capture their imagination in your own particular cultural and political context. So let me turn to a few of the World Alzheimer's reports that will be an important quarry for you in the development of your advocacy. The 2011 report talked about the benefits of early diagnosis and intervention. And it will be obvious to you that no journey with dementia can start well without a timely diagnosis and good post-diagnostic support. And this report suggests that as many as 28 million of the 36 million people with dementia at that time had not received a diagnosis. So evidently, they would not be able to access services. And in many countries, a diagnosis will not be followed by good post-diagnostic support. So you have the interesting example in Scotland of a post-diagnostic guarantee, where people are helped to plan their care and support and to identify the resources they have. The 2012 report talks about stigma, how to overcome stigma. It is based on a large survey of people with dementia and their carers. It identified stigma as a cause of social isolation and a barrier to finding solutions. It provides some examples worldwide of how to tackle stigma and makes 10 recommendations. There will be a further report on stigma in 2019. A central question in your advocacy will be about how to provide good care, the journey of caring. Many countries do not have a developed long-term care system, and it will be an important part of your advocacy either to strengthen your long-term care system or to get the elements of it into place. In doing so, there are many complex issues that you will need to think about as an advocate. For example, who pays? The quality of dementia care, particularly in institutional settings. The integration of health and social services. Support for informal carers through direct payments, multi-component elements of education and training and support. The priority for home-based care and support. The 2014 report addresses dementia and risk reduction. This is important to you as an advocate, not only because it offers the potential for any population group of reducing the risk of dementia, but also because it gives you a positive message. It gives you a positive message because there is now strong evidence that risk reduction is possible. The report identifies 4 key domains in which risk reduction is important in dementia: developmental and early life factors, psychological factors, lifestyle, and cardiovascular risk factors. Dementia risk reduction is an important and positive message because it makes the point that dementia, like any other chronic disease, whether heart or diabetes, is possible to address through preventative strategies. And important also, of course, is that many of these strategies will be similar across diabetes, heart, and dementia. The 2015 report is very important because it underlines the importance of being able to talk about prevalence of dementia, the incidence of dementia, and its cost. You will find yourselves repeating over and over these numbers. Don't be worried to do that, because it is what has caught the imagination of politicians and bureaucrats across the world. This report also captures in short space the key recommendations that ADI believed were important to developing the Global Dementia Action Plan, and which subsequently were influential in persuading countries to adopt the plan. Improving healthcare for people living with dementia was the focus of the 2016 report. And this is important because, as I said earlier, your key objective as an advocate is to make sure that the health system becomes more accessible, more supportive, more relevant to people with dementia and their families. And in doing so, it's important to do so at least cost. And an important focus of this report is the primary care system and its importance in diagnosis and early recognition of dementia. Important to you as an advocate will be to reflect on how your primary care system or your health workers can be involved in dementia and can be assisted to achieve timely diagnosis and post-diagnostic support. The most recent World Alzheimer's Report on research will tell you a lot about latest developments in respect of clinical and medical research, care, and prevention. It makes a call to government to devote 1% of the societal cost of the disease for research, much more than is being spent at the present time. It makes the point that dementia for a long while has been the poor cousin in research activities. And it identifies what leading research scientists believe to be the biggest areas of hope and frustration in dementia research. And most of us believe that we now have a great opportunity through research to identify earlier those who are at risk of dementia. And with that earlier diagnosis will come, hopefully, medical and other interventions that will delay the progression of dementia. As an advocate, you will find that a picture is worth 1,000 words. ADI can help you in this because ADI, in my view, have become quite expert in infographics and ways of getting a message across to people about the numbers of people with dementia and its costs. So let me just show you some of these. And I would encourage you to talk to ADI staff about whether some of these infographics could be helped, could be developed in ways that will help you in your advocacy. And a central point that has been made in World Alzheimer's Months is that there will be one new case of dementia every 3 seconds. A simple message. It captures the imagination. Use it over and over again. Costs are an important element of our advocacy. And not just because the amount of the cost is huge in terms of healthcare systems, as well as to the families and carers of people with dementia, but because those resources should be spent as well as possible and in effective ways. And one way of capturing the attention of health administrators and politicians is to talk about strategies that will make the most effective use of the resources available for dementia. There are now over 30 countries which have dementia plans of various qualities. Not all of these have funding attached, and funding is of course important, but having a dementia plan is a first step to getting action. So let me turn to my second element. And important to this is a focus on a national dementia plan. This is likely to be the focus of your advocacy because it will capture, it will draw together what it is you want. The plan will change over time. Scotland, Australia, and other countries are now into their third or fourth plans. It becomes a roadmap for action, setting priorities and targets. It may seem obvious to you, but it may not seem obvious to the people you're talking about why it is that a plan is necessary. It's necessary, of course, to promote a wider understanding that dementia is a major and social challenge. It is necessary to optimize the use of available resources and to improve and coordinate diagnosis, care, treatment, and prevention, and to invest in research. A plan is necessary to address stigma and social isolation through understanding dementia as a chronic condition. And it is important to recognise the importance of family carers and their need for support. In low and middle income countries, it will be the case that maybe more than 90% of the care that's provided will be through the family. Even in higher income countries, it is likely to be the case that the majority of care in the community is provided through the informal carers. You need to be able to talk about dementia as a public health issue. The world's population is aging. You need to be able to talk about dementia as the most disabling of all conditions. You need to be able to illustrate the extreme impact on caregivers, families, and societies of dementia. And you need to be able to get the message across that there's a lack of awareness and understanding of dementia at some level by everybody. It is still the case that dementia is often regarded as a normal part of aging. This report, which I regard as one of the best reports that has been produced, was the joint effort of the World Health Organization and Alzheimer's Disease International. It will explain to you why dementia is a public health priority, and in doing so, will help you understand issues around diagnosis and care and prevention and the role of the family carer. I recommend it to you as one of the first things you should take a look at. An important point to make, in my view, is that high-income countries have demonstrated over the last 15 to 20 years the high cost of not planning. There has, for example, been an underinvestment in home and community-based care services, including respite care, which is so important to the family carer. And the absence of these services or their underdevelopment has resulted in some countries in the premature institutionalization of people with dementia. And we all know that people with dementia and older people more generally want to live at home for as long as possible. And an overinvestment in institutional care, which has taken place in some high-income countries, can often result in an inappropriate care environment, as well as a costly outcome for the health and long-term care system. There has been an underuse of the primary health system and an overuse of specialist resources to diagnose dementia in some countries, resulting in higher diagnostic costs. And there's been a failure to address dementia risk reduction alongside the preventative strategies which have been developed for smoking, heart, and diabetes, for example. I have said in this seminar that it is important for you to be positive. And one of the exciting things for me, as someone who's been involved in this area for a long while, is how much we have learned this century about dementia and the important messages that can be conveyed about dementia. Most importantly, we need to understand that dementia is a chronic condition. It is not just a natural part of aging. We need to understand that systemic change in mainstream health and long-term care is essential to promoting a better quality of care and life for people with dementia. But in addition, we need to make it understood by health administrators and politicians that special dementia care services will be needed to supplement the mainstream system. We know that dementia should be included in preventative health programs alongside heart, diabetes, and smoking. We know that the priority is community care rather than institutionalized care. We know that the rates of diagnosis are totally inadequate. We know that services need to be coordinated to make them more accessible. We know that the quality of dementia care is often poor and not person-centered, but that it is possible to provide good quality dementia care. And we know that younger people with dementia have special needs. It is important as an advocate that you make the point that civil society has an important role to play in dementia policy and planning. And this is because dementia is both a medical and a social issue. We need to tackle dementia in order to avoid the stigma and social isolation that it attracts. People with dementia and their family carers are a driving force for action, and they are the experts. They live with the condition 24 hours a day. Alzheimer's organizations and people with dementia and their family carers must be fully engaged from the outset in planning. Don't be modest. Alzheimer's organizations often may be small and short of resources. But across the world, Alzheimer's organizations have credibility as advocates, and you must insist on your involvement as part of civil society. It is important that national plans tackle dementia both as a medical and a social issue. And as an advocate, you should think about developing health and social care pathways to show how access to services is working from the perspective of government, service providers, and people with dementia and their families. The World Health Organization have produced a comprehensive guide on how to plan. It helps you understand the importance of situational analysis, resource assessment, setting objectives, priorities, preparing an operational plan, budget, monitoring, and evaluation. But the critical point about planning and success is to identify the political and administrative leadership that will secure the multi-sectoral collaboration, stakeholder engagement, and funding that you will need. The real challenge to you in a national dementia plan is not writing it, but making it come alive. And that, of course, includes attracting resources. So think about key partnerships: health and social services departments, medical and care staff, service providers, and people with dementia and their families through Alzheimer's organizations. It has been a disappointment to me that many people who are active as advocates on dementia have not read the Global Dementia Action Plan. Please read it. Please think about the 7 priority areas it identifies. Think about how the targets for those 7 priority areas relate to your country and what you can achieve and work for. And keep in mind that the plan will be monitored in 2020, 2023, and 2025. There are opportunities to keep governments and civil society honest in achieving what we need to do to improve the lives of people with dementia. ADI has produced the first From Plan to Impact report on the first year of the Global Dementia Action Plan. Have a look at it and see what the elements are that are important to the plans that are coming into place. Important are the awareness activities through information, adoption of dementia-friendly projects, and the potential for reducing the risk of dementia. These are included in actions 2 and 3 of the global plan. Then there is capacity building through training and education for health professionals, care staff, and family carers. Action 5. Pilot programs will be important in many countries to lay the basis for the adoption of new models of support for family carers and effective approaches to diagnosis and post-diagnostic support. These are covered in Action 4. And then you have the importance of monitoring and gathering evidence, which is the focus of Action 6. The World Health Organization have shown the way in monitoring through setting up the Global Dementia Observatory. It is a web-based data and knowledge exchange platform that will gather together a mass of information about dementia support and care activities across the world. It will help you and other members draw together the evidence you need to plan and to strengthen your health and social care systems. It is a monitoring mechanism that will be important to track the implementation of the Global Dementia Action Plan. Civil society should, of course, including Alzheimer's organizations, be involved in the monitoring process. And you should encourage your government to sign up to the Global Dementia Observatory and to help monitor the progress that is made. Strategy and policy can sometimes worry advocates as being an intellectual activity which is perhaps beyond their day-to-day activities. This is not the case. Policy is simply translating plans and policies into action. I have found this report by the OECD addressing dementia very helpful. It overviews the policies employed by member countries who are of course higher income countries, what they have done to tackle dementia. It identifies 10 key policy objectives. And it emphasizes, as you would expect, that all countries should have dementia plans suited to their needs. This OECD report and the other briefs and reports that the OECD have produced are important. So have a look at the OECD website. And these are the 10 objectives of policy that the OECD have included in that publication addressing dementia. Think about these 10 policy directions in terms of a pathway. How do they relate to your country? What are the areas of strengths and weaknesses that you need to address? And which of those areas would you like to address first if you have the opportunity? Again, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And making policy simple in terms of these 10 objectives is important, while not distracting, of course, from the complexity of health and care systems. So let me turn to the third element of advocacy, spokespeople. It is important to have a small number of spokespeople who will convey your message, who are well briefed, on message and consistent. And this comes back to the point I emphasized at the outset, which is national unity. Know your audience, choose your spokespeople carefully. For politicians and voters, the most important thing is to get the public on side. Politicians care what voters think. Civil servants need to be your friend. It's easy to make fun of bureaucrats. I was one once upon a time. They should be your friend. And the dementia movement is always at its most powerful when people with dementia and carers are involved. And there are many ways of involving people with dementia and their carers. Conferences, Alzheimer's universities, having people tell their stories, having people with dementia on your elected boards, and empowering people with dementia through self-advocacy to speak out for themselves. And you will find that in doing this work, a partnership with Dementia Alliance International may well be of help to you. They are very much involved in advocacy work, especially human rights and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So if you want help in these areas, do contact the DAI. My fourth element was champions. Start at the top if you can. Plans in some countries have been led by presidents and prime ministers, as in the case of Sarkozy in France, Cameron in the UK, Howard in Australia, and Abe in Japan. Get on side with health and social affairs or finance departments. With your members of parliaments, start dementia friends groups in parliament. Focus on senior staff at the ministry and staff in ministers' offices. Talk to a WHO office if there is one in your country. Cultivate media personalities and royalty. ADI have taken their own advice and are now approaching people to be honorary ambassadors. This is important to the life of ADI. So ask yourself the question, are there celebrities in your country that could support your cause? How would you find out about their interest in dementia? How can you contact them? And what should they be asked to do? Let me come back to partnership, which I've emphasized at a number of points in this seminar. You need to make the plan come alive. You need to engage people, and I think dementia-friendly concepts are important to that. You need to engage communities. You need to be confident. You are the expert. I believe that dementia-friendly concepts are important because they convey an important message and engage the wider community. It is a way to supporting the person with dementia to achieve the best quality of life reasonably possible. It is a way to reduce stigma and greater awareness of dementia. It is a way to achieve respect for people with dementia and include them in the everyday life of the community to ensure that they have the rights and capabilities they have recognized, that they have the right to access and enjoy the services and activities we all enjoy. I'm excited by the fact that dementia-friendly concepts have captured the imagination of communities, policymakers, and researchers around the world. It is a social movement that can take multiple forms. I say, let 1,000 flowers bloom. So you will find that dementia-friendly concepts have taken many forms in different countries. Through social support, memory cafes, volunteer programs, volunteer work opportunities to enable the person with dementia to continue their interests. It has resulted in greater awareness in countries like Japan and United Kingdom, where hundreds of thousands of people have been trained in the basic elements of understanding dementia, so they can reach out to the wider community. Inclusive communities have been fostered by local authorities and community groups in some countries to help people at the local level enjoy their lives and participate in the community. They have resulted in identifying more clearly what the barriers are to engagement and how they can be addressed. Better quality health and dementia services have been addressed by building the capabilities of staff through training and education, and having dementia friends in hospitals and elsewhere. And then there have been improvements in the physical environments, whether in private homes or public spaces. You can find out more about the principles that govern dementia-friendly concepts, as well as about the projects around the world through these two reports on the ADI website. So ADI can help you. Get to know the ADI team. Look at the national action plans that have been progressed. Visit the website. Go to key advocacy events, conferences, and regional seminars that ADI may be organizing. Join in World Alzheimer's Month. Come to our biennial conference in Singapore in 2020. Keep us up to date with your activities so we can learn from you. Send us stories and photos that we can use in our publications and work. Please do not hesitate to contact us. These are our staff, our CEO, Paola Barberino, and our general managers and other staff. We can help you on policy and research. We can help you on events. We attach a great importance to membership and supporting our members through the work of Laura DeBas and our membership committee of the board. And we can help you with communications. And we have regional directors in the Asia Pacific and Americas. There is a lot going on. It's hard to keep up, and the agenda changes constantly. So stay in touch, read our newsletters, read our reports, come to regional meetings and the international conference. And if in any doubt, don't hesitate to contact our CEO or any ADI board member or myself. We all want to help. Good luck with your advocacy, and I hope this seminar has helped you think through just a little the issues you face. Thank you so much for your time.